So I recently heard that Bill Maher actually extended some grace to Whoopi Goldberg and defended her and said that she should not have been suspended for 2 weeks in relation to her comments about the Holocaust. And when I first heard this, I said, good for Bill Maher, because honestly, the whole idea that Whoopi Goldberg needs to reflect and all this condescending language that people are giving to Whoopi Goldberg in relation to her stupid comments are ridiculous. We should just say Whoopi Goldberg said something stupid, she's wrong, let's make fun of her. She doesn't need 2 weeks on hiatus, especially when she already acknowledges where she was wrong, where she was misinformed, to think about it and reflect on it. She's a grown adult woman, and it's insane. And overall, that's what I thought the crux of Bill Maher's defense of Whoopi Goldberg was, and for the most part, it was. However, and I do mean how and then ever, there's another part of it. There's a part of it that's absolutely shocking and devastating, where Bill Maher actually blames Whoopi Goldberg's stupid take on white people. Now we're going to talk about this. We got a sponsor. I will catch you on the other side of that sponsor. Let me throw it over to that Sean and then come back to this Sean. Do you feel like you've tried everything in terms of weight management, goofy diets, different routines, eating at this time but not at this time, and no bread on Tuesdays but definitely bread on Fridays? Well, you're not alone. A lot of Americans, obviously, look at the obesity statistics, are going through these troubles. But one of the things that I'll recommend, because I'm on this journey right there with you, is Keto with Justice. This powder is pretty awesome. It's not complicated. It's not overly convoluted. I don't need to take steps this day but that day. I just put a little bit of this powder in my morning coffee or in any morning beverage, and I watch the fat melt away. Keto with Justice is great. It follows the same basic principles of the keto diet. It's just one powder a day, no overcomplications, and it will help prolong a state of ketosis and thus help you burn a little bit more fat. 51% off at ketowithjustice.com. That's ketowithjustice.com. So I'm going to give a quick recap of what went on in relation to The View. If you want to know more about it, if you want more details, more information, then go to my full video on it where I laugh at Whoopi Goldberg and explain why she's wrong and teach you guys all something about the Nazis' perspective on the world, because I am a great teacher right here on theinternet.com, and you guys are my students out there in your seats learning every word that I absolutely say. But here's the thing. Whoopi Goldberg on The View said that the Holocaust wasn't about race. Here's the clip of her saying that.
Well, also, if you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy.
Well, but it's not about race. But these are two white groups of people.
Now, Whoopi immediately received pushback from people, including dumb people like Anna Navarro, who said it was about white supremacy, even though, again, the Nazis were about German supremacy. You can stretch to Aryan supremacy, but this was not overall about white people. The Germans did declare war on a bunch of white countries. But overall, Whoopi Goldberg's point that she was trying to make was that the Jews are white, Nazis are white, therefore it wasn't about race. And this completely overlooks the fact that Hitler said, and it's one of his most famous quotes, and people who don't like Jewish people use it all the time, that the greatest lie about Judaism is that it is a religion and not a race. So Hitler believed that they were a race. So whether you want to say technically it was about ethnicity or religion, or a combination of ethnicity, culture, and religion, in reality, Hitler labeled it a race. Whoopi Goldberg didn't understand that. She got made fun of for a couple of days, and then she came out the next day or a few days later and said, look, I was wrong. I got told off. I talked to a person. He explained to me how Hitler viewed it, and I'm not going to disassociate him from his own words.
Today on our show, I misspoke. I said that the Holocaust wasn't about race, and it was instead about man's inhumanity to man. But it is indeed about race, because Hitler and the Nazis considered Jews to be an inferior race. Now, words matter, and mine are no exception. I regret my comments, as I said, and I stand corrected.
Now, I pointed out that the big issue that I had with what Whoopi Goldberg said was not what she was trying to say, which if you read it generously, it was likely that she was trying to say it's not about skin color. But in reality, it was this weird thing about how it's humans versus humans, and that's the problem. It's just human nature. And I don't like when people try to disassociate the ideology from the actions, when the ideology is so tied into the actions. It's like if you say, well, Pol Pot massacring all those people, that was just humans being humans. No, communism was the motivation behind that. Same thing with the Soviet massacres, the Chinese, all the people they killed. Communism is behind that. That's the reason that they did it. Landlord classicides, you draw on a direct line from Marx. You can't just say that's people being bad to people. That's some humanist nonsense. It's a left-wing thing where they try to disassociate everything from actual motivations and basically take responsibility off the actors who were doing bad. So I didn't like that. That's what I talked about. But Bill Maher basically throws out his take and why he doesn't want Whoopi Goldberg suspended. And again, a good chunk of it is stuff that I agree with.
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that.
So the first thing that I will point out, and this is actually something that I agree with and people get too wrapped up in, is this idea that you should immediately cheer if something bad happens to somebody who attacks you. This isn't really a good way of thinking, and Bill Maher, at least in this moment, isn't embracing that mindset. Obviously, he makes fun of the idea of karma because he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in karma or any of the things associated with religion or the universe paying you back or whatever. But I do want to say this is actually a good principle. Don't necessarily root for every single person who comes at you or has a disagreement with you to have a big public downfall. And he also talks about how Whoopi Goldberg attacks him and says stupid things all the time.
Attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. It just happened to coincide.
And this is true. Whoopi and all the members of The View say stupid things all the time, and a lot of them go after Bill Maher because Bill Maher has been targeting political correctness. And by the way, he's had quite a number of very good monologues. This is why those people who dismiss everybody who don't like Trump or who is deranged against Trump are absolutely ridiculous, because he's been talking about California taxes and regulations and all the problems in the state that he currently lives in and how it's being ruined by the Democratic Party in an honest and genuine way. And Bill Maher actually has connections to the Democratic Party. He can actually have Democratic Party officials on. And if you want better policies to come in different cities across the country, then Bill Maher actually criticizing them as someone on the left might actually have more impact than people on the right who can't win elections in the state of California at all. So credit where credit is due lately, and I was going to do a couple of videos recently on Bill Maher actually being on point on a few things, but again, he's going to go to the ACLU person that he had on, and I do want to talk about this, and then we'll get to the crazy.
I had on last week Ira Glasser, former longtime head of the ACLU, talking about free speech. Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Now, of course, the losers in the comments, the people who clutch their pearls at every statement that they don't like, the people who want people censored for saying the wrong things, are going to correct Bill and say, actually, Bill, the First Amendment only applies to the government, and if The View and ABC want to pull Whoopi Goldberg off the air, they're allowed to do that. It's not a free speech issue, Bill. But the thing is, what he's referencing, and this is an overall principle that maybe people should take beyond the governing authority of the nation, is that free speech is an inherent good on its own. It should be embraced culturally. We shouldn't say, okay, everybody should censor everybody and everybody should attack everybody over speech, but as long as the government doesn't do it, then we're totally fine. Obviously, the government doing it is far worse because they have the power to use force and violence on people. But Bill is commenting about political correctness and how it's essentially an extension of the ideas of authoritarian governments in our private lives, and people embracing a culture that is intolerant of free speech is ahead of the government, which will eventually adopt policies based on that. We're getting to the point where way too many Americans are pro-censoring speech, if you call it misinformation or disinformation, or just hate speech in general. So we could end up at a point where we don't have free speech in the governing documents of the United States via constitutional amendment, because the population has been radicalized by the left against the principles of free speech. They don't carry it in their hearts, so they're not going to expect the government to abide by those principles. That's a terrible thing, and that's what Bill Maher is referencing, and he had an ACLU, a former ACLU person on, and I'm sure that's what they were referencing when they were on his show. So yeah, the principle of free speech should still stand, and by the way, It should apply to right-wingers way more than left-wingers because they're the ones who are typically censored, and Whoopi Goldberg only got suspended 2 weeks when right-wing people would have been fired for this. If she wasn't a black woman, she would have been fired instantly. She was given special treatment because she's a black woman, so it's not even that bad, that suspension, even though ABC is incredibly condescending to her.
I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
Again, this is a very solid point, and this goes to what I'm saying about the cultural ideas of free speech and disagreements in public discourse. We don't have a culture of free speech where when somebody says something dumb or somebody says something you disagree with, you immediately want to come for their job, their income, their livelihood, their family, and you want to dig up more dirt on them so you can smear them even further so that they can never recover from your attacks on them just because they said something dumb or something you disagree with, or both. Now, so far, so good. So far, Bill Maher is on point in his defense of Whoopi Goldberg. He's extending grace to somebody who does uncharitable interpretations of what he says, who actually advocates for the canceling of other people, who wields the power based on her position against others in an unfair way. But Bill Maher's not buying into it. He's standing on his principle. And again, this is probably reflective of the fact that Bill Maher, I believe, was thrown off a CBS or NBC or ABC, I don't even know which one he was on, when he did Politically Incorrect for comments he made immediately following the 9/11 attacks. So Bill Maher does not like this attitude. He does not like the politicians and all these people or the government minders or the people who are busybodies in the public going after these people, and he's extending that lesson that he learned in his own life to Whoopi Goldberg up until this point. Now it's about to get crazy because, of course, we're going to see the soft bigotry of no expectations.
Can we just understand that part of our sorry racial history in this country is that the point of view from a black person is often going to be very different and sometimes shocking to a white person.
So this is what I can't stand behind. This is the whole reason I'm making this video, because Bill Maher extending grace to Whoopi Goldberg is neither here nor there, or as the professionals like to say, is neither nya nor nya. But Bill Maher saying that the reason Whoopi Goldberg has a stupid opinion about the Holocaust, the reason she's ignorant about the Holocaust, is because of the sorry racial history of the United States of America and its impact on black people is so ridiculous and absurd, and it's actually more demeaning to Whoopi Goldberg than anything that was said by ABC when they were like, she needs 2 weeks to reflect upon her positions. It's like, hey, listen, I know she said something incredibly stupid, incredibly dumb. I disagree with it. And by the way, these are Maher's words, not mine. He said it was a crazy opinion, but Whoopi Goldberg is black in America, so can we really expect her to have a smart opinion on the Holocaust? That's insane. That's ridiculous. That's more offensive and more racist than Whoopi Goldberg making a mistake and trying to communicate that she said that the Holocaust wasn't about skin color. Because I think ultimately that's what Whoopi Goldberg was actually trying to say when you cut through all the nonsense. That's what I glean from her interviews. It's just that she associates race with skin color. She sees them as one and the same thing. But Maher, totally off the reservation here.
I pulled the quote from when Whoopi defended Michael Vick. Remember Michael Vick was the football player who was electrocuting dogs? And I'm a lifelong PETA board member. You know, okay. Also someone who believes the Nazis were very racist. Okay. Oh, yeah. But here's what she said about Michael Vick. He's from the South. This is part of his cultural upbringing. For a lot of people, dogs are sport. Instead of just saying he's a beast and he's a monster, this is a kid who comes from a culture where this is not questioned. Okay? You see the point here?
So I just want to point out right here that Bill Maher is racializing Whoopi Goldberg's quote related to Michael Vick because Whoopi Goldberg was talking about how dogfighting is very prevalent in the South. Now, it is true that if you were to break it down by the numbers, dogfighting is likely more prevalent among Southern black people than it would be among Southern white people. But I just want to point out that Bill Maher is adding in the racial component of it, and Whoopi Goldberg is trying to explain the mindset of Michael Vick. And by the way, this is true to a certain extent. And one of the things that I have said in the past is that people in the United States of America are far too insane when it comes to dogs. You have all these dog moms that literally see their dogs as children. So the attacks on Michael Vick, the hatred of Michael Vick, that is not comparable to players that were involved in homicides and all other kinds of problems is a bit ridiculous. Dante Stallworth got drunk, hit a man with his car and killed him, and he spent 30 days in jail. Michael Vick spent years in jail for his involvement in a dogfighting ring. I don't think these two things are equivalent, and I do think that the reaction was ridiculous. But again, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about a culture that Michael Vick had embraced, that the national American scene is totally against, specifically the Americans that absolutely love dogs. So there's actually some truth in what Whoopi Goldberg said, even though I would disagree with her. Michael Vick, you shouldn't be running a dogfighting ring. You shouldn't be torturing animals in order to make them compete with people, especially when you're a successful NFL player. It's kind of ridiculous. And again, you're still ultimately responsible for your actions, despite the context in which you grew up. I mean, Aaron Hernandez, people talked about how he grew up in an area where he was around a bunch of bad influences. That doesn't excuse the people that he murdered and assaulted and all the crimes that he committed and all the lives that he ripped apart by his actions.
Again, I don't agree with her on Michael Vick, but we grew up in two different worlds, which the white people imposed upon the black people. They are going to sometimes have a very different opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm totally not on board with this. I'm all for giving people grace. I'm all for giving people understanding. But the idea that you would disassociate all responsibility for Whoopi Goldberg being completely uneducated about the topics that she talks about from her and blame it on the fact that she's black and blame it on the fact that white people impose this on black people like Whoopi Goldberg is absolutely ridiculous in every way. And what's crazy is that Bill talks about how her suspension is very condescending.
And the answer is not to make them sit in a corner for 2 weeks. That is insulting. It's so insulting to make a 65-year-old, I mean, the person at ABC News said, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. Reflect. How insulting for someone of her age.
What could be more condescending than somebody on national television saying, look, I know this person said something stupid, but they're a non-white, so we can't expect them to say something not stupid? That's absolutely ridiculous in every way. Whoopi Goldberg is dumb on her own, and there are plenty of black educated people that are well aware of the reasons behind the Holocaust. So Bill, what are you saying? You're totally driving off a cliff, and this is one of the big problems with Bill Maher. People talk a lot about his Trump derangement, but one of the things that people don't acknowledge enough is how weak on racial issues Bill Maher is.
And as I mentioned last week, how could a nation like America have maintained an apartheid state for the vast majority of its history and expect the views of the races to match on all matters? It's amazing they match on any.
So Bill right here is just ridiculous in every way, and I'm not going to support the lowering of standards for minorities because Bill Maher is uncomfortable around racial issues and around minorities. That's more condescending than what the person at ABC said, and the person at ABC was hyping up the condescension powers from within them while they were saying Whoopi needed to reflect on what she said. It is perfectly reasonable to say, look, Whoopi said something stupid. She's responsible for that. She's acknowledged that, and not pin it on white people doing something to the past against other black people. And basically, what can you do? Except for blame white people overall, because we can't have equal standards or expectations for people to have a knowledge base when they're on national TV talking about a major historical event. But hey, look, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box. This has been me talking about Bill Maher being unusually condescending towards Whoopi Goldberg while trying to extend her grace. Till next time.